Good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are. I'm gonna be reviewing Superman 3 now, and I was supposed to do it yesterday, but I tried doing it over and over again, and I believe that it happens to a lot of reviewers when they do multiple takes, and it's just it's never right. My first take, I got a phone call. The second, it was just done wrong, and the third one went on for like an hour, I think, and it's just now I'm trying to condense it into as short as possible without, leaving out much. So let's talk about Superman 3. The story centers around not Superman, not Clark Kent, not any of the main characters, but a new character. A character that we would never see and in any future movies, or even in the series, or even in the comics. This was just a character that was made for this movie, and that is Gus Gorman, played by Richard Pryor. Now, I think the reason why. Now, let's get this out of the way. A lot of people give this movie a really hard time. Now, I don't think that it's a bad movie. I think it's a good movie, but a horrible Superman movie. As a Superman movie, I think it sucks. There are some elements in this movie where you're like, yeah, it is a Superman movie. And it feels like this movie is, it would fit well if it was made in the 50s, and but the thing is, after you give us Superman 1 and 2, and then you just, work backwards from that after giving us a serious, a serious interpretation of Superman, and then giving us this comic, comic relief type of movie, it doesn't work. And I think that the reason why Richard Pryor's character was even introduced in this movie, and why, it feels like, Richard Lester was like, well, we've got Richard Pryor, so we got to make a movie centering around him, and I kind of agree with that, but if only if it was a movie of its own, not Superman, a Superman movie. And I really don't think that he did anything to give this movie, it make this movie more of a Superman movie. There are some stuff where you're like, he's misunderstood and stuff like that, and yeah, I kind of get that from Superman villains, but isn't Superman the misunderstood one in most of his stories? And isn't most of his villains badasses and criminals? I mean, Lex Luthor can be the exception in some interpretations, but isn't Superman always the guy that is always misunderstood? Hmm. Um, there are some stuff, like I said, I really enjoyed in this movie. There is the part where I think the best part of this movie is where he fights with himself in the junkyard, where Clark Kent fights bad Superman, his dark side, and it looks wonderful. I really like the symbolism of the movie, the symbolism in that scene, and it's just it was done well. And there are parts where there is evil Superman, and I think that's the best way to um, you know have Bizarro without having Bizarro. Because I always felt that the Bizarro character was just too childish. It's too much for the kids, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of characters that are like, they're for kids, but it's and they wouldn't work in, in the adult interpretations. Like for example, Mixiplik. I never thought that he would actually work in a more adult universe, but he works well for for kids, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having that. But yeah, I really like the that interpretation. Um, And again, we have this bland multimillionaire who just, oh, I just want to take over the world, going on here, and it's I really don't like that villain, you know. Again, the credit goes to his henchman, goes to his assistant Lorelai, who I think was she was awesome. I really liked her. I really did like her. She's this, she looks like a cliche. She's a dumb blonde who looks like she can't do anything. It's a cliche. But what works in this movie is that she actually is smart, but she's just she's fooling everyone. Everyone is like, you gotta click on the clickety clack and the thing and the thingamajig, and because it will detonate some sort of techno babble. And she's like, in other words, you mean that red shiny button? And I'm like, how the hell did you know that? And she's actually really smart, and I like that. I like that part of it. Um, Richard Pryor was, he's really funny. He's really funny, and there are some stuff here that I really found funny. Maybe it's just, me as a Richard Pryor fan. That's the reason why I found it funny. Because a lot of people are like, it's not funny at all. Maybe because it's, for the thing is, I don't really understand why they get Richard Pryor. Well, I kind of understand because he was the hottest celebrity around that time, and I think he got about like I think like 30 million to be in this movie. Um, but the thing is, this movie is mainly targeted for kids. And that's the biggest audience for this movie, kids. Why hire Richard Pryor and a foul mouth, dirty comedian? Because it's kind of like having Superman without the cape. It's kind of like that. Richard Pryor lost his cape in this movie, and that is him being a foul mouth. Now, not saying that there aren't stuff in here that are really funny that includes him, but it's just there's this part where Ross Webster calls him to his office and he thinks he's in trouble, and he's like, well, I always liked you, man, and I really don't want to go to jail because there are robbers and rapists that rape robbers, and I really don't want to be in there. It's really funny, Richard Pryor really is an awesome. He really was an awesome comedian. I really love this stuff, and Lana Lang was the new love interest, and I don't have a problem with that. I actually prefer that because Clark Kent is moving forward. You got to forget about Lois Lane. You had her in the first two movies. Now you got to forget about her. Now you gotta go for the next. For the you got to move forward. You got to have Lana Lang, and I was really hoping that Lana Lang would be, his love interest in Superman 4, but we'll get to that. So. Yeah, nothing much more to say about this movie except that it is a good movie, but a really bad Superman movie. I really recommend it for those who like movies, not for those who are diehard Superman fans, because I really don't think it caters to any of them. So it just caters to guys who love comedy. So yeah, there you go. I'd give this movie a 4. I'd probably give it a 3.5, but there are some stuff that I really enjoyed in this, like the symbolism where he's fighting in the junkyard with himself, and even the supercomputer. I really thought that there was a lot of the potential in the supercomputer where and he even grabs one of it grabs Vera Webster, Ross Webster's sister, and he makes her into this sort of cyborg. And I really thought that, there was a lot of potential. I was like, oh my god, that's cool. That's awesome. Now you gotta grab Ross Webster and turn him into a cyborg, and, have them both go after Superman and have this epic fight where they know his weaknesses and they've got, like, these death rays of Kryptonite. And that is the closest that you'd get to Metallo. That's awesome. but it didn't happen. He quickly, gets a hold of acid, and the acid overheats and starts splattering all around the CPU, and it just blows up. Very anticlimactic. Um, so yeah, there you go. I give it a 4, and I really think that there are some stuff in here that I really enjoyed. The Clark Kent stuff I really, really loved. Christopher Reeves always pulls off an awesome Clark Kent and Superman. He is one of those people that can fool you. I really do think so. A lot of people say like, yeah, how does Clark Kent fool everyone? It's just putting on glasses. How do you fool everyone? Christopher Reeves does it. He really does it. He really does fool everyone, and you feel like the people that say that, how does Clark Kent pulls it off? When they're watching the movie, they're not thinking that. After watching the movie, they're like, yeah, how does that happen? Trust me, I really do believe that. So there you go. Next, I'll be reviewing Superman 4. Um, and a lot of people have said that that movie was horrible. Now, I do admit that this movie was a bad Superman movie, but it is a guilty pleasure. I really enjoyed it. As a movie on its own. So there you go. Now, before I go, I just want to say that originally this movie was it actually was supposed to have Brainiac and Mr. Mxyzptlk to be in this movie, as well as Supergirl. But they weren't in this movie because, well, Dudley Moore was supposed to play the role of Brainiac. Um, and he wasn't he had other ties, and he had other commitments. I think he was doing Alfie around the time. I think so. I'm not sure. So he didn't get to do this. So because he was like this big celebrity around the time, so they decided to go with Richard Pryor, and I really was hoping that Dudley Moore was going to be in this. So he didn't get to be there. Um, and I really thought that it would have been this would have been a better movie if indeed Dudley Moore was going to be in this. Because the storyline was Brainiac. Let's see. Brainiac was supposed to be from Kalu, and he discovers Supergirl. In the same way that Superman was discovered by the Kents, and Brainiac was supposed to be this sort of father figure towards Supergirl, and he eventually falls in love with her, and but she does not feel the same way because she has fallen for Superman. Now there's this weird love triangle, which I think that would have actually kind of worked if it did indeed happen. Because then you would have a reason why Brainiac would go after Superman rather than him being this supercomputer that wants to know everything in the universe and then destroy it, and then destroy himself. What? What kind of supercomputer is that? Um, I really don't get that. I really never liked those intentions. That's why Brainiac has never been one of my favorites. I did like him as a kid because I kind of found him interesting. I always was intrigued by cyborgs, but it's just that the intentions were just weird. And I really don't know what what kind of role he was going to play into this, into that would have been movie, but would have been interesting. So